Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another ECH Postgame Live. This one after a 5-1 loss to the Dallas Stars in the first half of two straight games in this building at Climate Pledge Arena against the Dallas Stars. And I mean, this game was really, I think, just the Kraken getting outclassed by a very good Dallas Stars team. I mean, this is a team that is going to make the playoffs, that's looking to make a pretty deep playoff run. Where Wyatt Johnston is a third line center, and we saw the move he was able to pull off late in this one. I mean, this is just a very skilled, very deep Dallas team. The Kraken kept it close for a while, but ultimately do fall 5-1 with the empty net goal from Mikko Rantanen. But I think the theme for this one for me really is, look, we talked about losing fun, and I wouldn't call this losing fun. I think a 5-1 loss is like never that fun. But I would put it almost in the territory of, I guess, losing respectably a little bit. That's kind of how I was teeing it up to Dylan before those last couple Stars goals, where the Kraken were keeping it close, but it seemed clear they weren't going to tie it. So that's, my kind of take on this one. And so I see we have lots of chats in here, but before we get into chat, I want to thank our sponsor, Queen Anne Beer Hall. And of course, we are going to get the chance to see a lot of you Wednesday, April 2nd. That is coming up. That is Wednesday next week. In just a few days, we're going to have our watch party there at Moss Bay Hall in Kirkland, their second location on the east side. So those of you on the east side, should be nice and easy to get there for the game against the Vancouver Canucks on April 2nd. Like this one, that is also a 7:30 p.m. start, and it's going to be a great time. We're going to have the bingo is coming back. Chuck and Shannon gave me some more bingo cards. We could play bingo for the game. And we're going to have a raffle for some great prizes as well, and a chance to win Kraken tickets to the game against St. Louis late in the season there. So everyone join us for that watch party if you can. It's going to be a really great time. And thanks again to Queen Anne Beer Hall for sponsoring each and every one of these post-game lives. So let's roll right on into chat. And we have a super chat here from Zoe. Penalties, and then the face, the emoji. I agree. There were a lot of penalties in this game. It just kind of kept going back and forth, especially for a team like the Kraken that tend to be in games where not many penalties happen. This one had a lot of them. And I felt like they were playing with fire, putting the Stars on the power play as often as they were. And turns out eventually you do get burned. I mean, they get burned on the first one there, but it seemed like the Stars power play wasn't looking all that dangerous. The next couple attempts, you had Yanni Newman knock the puck out of the air, and you had there was another one right after that where they put the Stars on the power play and they didn't get much done. But then you have Brandon Montour take a costly penalty early in the third there for high sticking. And you have Mason Marchment just kind of find a spot over the pad under the glove of Joey Decord. And that was the goal that really put this one away. So, yeah, penalty trouble, a rare problem for the Kraken, I think, but one for them tonight. And then also lots of penalties on the Stars in this one, too. But the Kraken, unable to take advantage. I think thought the power play, they struggled in this one. I think that is a storyline. The Kraken power play, what was their final stat? Yeah, they go 0 for 4 in this game, and it's tough. I mean, you cancel out the last 50 seconds of your first power play with a too many men penalty. Second game in a row, you take a too many men penalty. It's too late in the season for that kind of thing to be happening. I'm sure Dan Bowles may be the first to tell anyone that kind of thing can't happen. But yeah, the penalties were certainly a theme in this one. And I wonder if it's something that carries forward into the next game, because it's rare that you get these two games in the same building against the same team. So I wonder if it's going to be the same officiating crew or not, too. Spec says, yeah, the Stars were weirdly aggro tonight. Yeah, I think it did certainly get chippy at the end there. And I wonder how much that carries forward into the next game as well. It's a theme that we could be seeing. And I don't know. In a weird way, I was kind of hoping to see a little bit of chippiness, just knowing how the games tend to go, with two times against the same opponent. I thought that could maybe lead to some fun stuff. But not feeling very fun tonight. And then we'll go up to the top of chat here. B, the tank rolls onward. And yeah, it sure does. And this is the stretch of the schedule where we said that, maybe it felt like the losses, we're going to find the Kraken, like they weren't going to be able to do a whole lot about it. And that certainly felt this way in this game. I thought the Kraken gave a good effort. They tried as hard as they can, but the losses are going to find you playing against a team like Dallas. I expected that stretch to come a little earlier, but of course, Edmonton without McDavid and Draisaitl not the same Edmonton Oilers team that we know. So the Kraken were granted a bit of a reprieve from it initially, but now it's fully hitting, I think. Andrew says, starting to think that this team isn't making the playoffs. Yeah, that is a bit of news also today, is that the Kraken were mathematically eliminated this afternoon when the St. Louis Blues won. So the Kraken were 19 points back. So actually remain 19 points back with now 8 games to go. That is too much of a hill to climb mathematically. So certainly not going to make the playoffs. The Kraken are the 4th team in the league mathematically eliminated this season. Jeremy, let's just skip the game Monday. I mean, I I understand that sentiment after the Kraken. I thought they battled pretty hard in this one and still could not get it done against the Stars team. But you know what? They kept it close for a while. And I think if you convert on a power play or two, this is a winnable game. But, you know, the power play was a bit of an issue tonight, or you take 1 or 2 fewer penalties. So I think it's worthwhile playing the game on Monday. I think the Kraken have a shot, but, you know, it is going to be a tough competition there against Dallas. And yeah, as Bryce says, this Dallas team seems pretty good. Yeah, they are a very good team. Although I still think they're probably headed for a second round upset against Colorado. I don't know. I still don't see enough from the blue line that maybe they can get past them. Kraken Queen, shout out to the little kid in the bathroom who looked up at me and said, well, that game sucked. Oh man, that kid is ready to be a Kraken fan already. That's pretty funny there, Kraken Queen. Young Muerte, please stop sacrificing Joey. I want them to give Joey some rest. I've been on this train for a long time. I would love to see Philip Grubauer in net next game, just to give Joey some rest. He needs it, and I'm not going to let go of that as long as they keep playing him. Yeah, be agreeing that man does not deserve this. Yeah, you know, Joey made some big saves in this one, but ultimately, yeah, kind of hung out to dry on some of those. Lindsay, a good loss. May the tank gods smile favorably upon our lottery odds. Yes, for Team Tank, this is a good result here. And hey, you know what? As the season gets, the closer it gets to the end, the more I'm going to be on Team Tank, especially as they are on the road. You know, when it gets to 1 or 2 games left, I guess you can win the last game of the season. It's here at home. It's fan appreciation night. But the Kraken do kind of close the gap a little bit. Buffalo's 2 points back of Seattle with 2 games in hand. So, you know, maybe looking a little realistic that Buffalo could pass the Kraken there. Jason, the tank isn't looking good either, as we're now 8th in odds for number 1. Top 4 or bust is busting. Well, the Kraken are 5th here by points percentage, according to tankathon.com here, and I think by regular points as well. So they have the 5th best odds as it is right now. They could go as high as 3rd, and they could go as low. Well, they could go very low. But the tank doing okay, could be doing better. But I mean, you know, could be doing better means that they've won some games recently. So that's all right. Let's see. Heather, are they mad at Groove for saying he needed consistent play, or just trying to burn out Joey? I mean, I think really what it is just that simply Joey Daccord is their better goalie. I don't think anyone can really debate that at this point. And I think the thinking from the team is just, we're going to play our better goalie most nights, and we feel he can handle the workload. I think it's not really a Grubauer thing. It's just, as long as it's not back-to-backs, they feel like they can give Joey this kind of workload and that he's going to be okay. I worry about whether or not that's the case. I have some doubts because goaltending it's a tough position, and big workloads lead to injuries and problems, but the team clearly feels differently, I think. And then also, I think maybe against a team like Dallas, there's a hesitation to start Grubauer in a game against a team with such offensive firepower where it could potentially get ugly. As good as Grub played a couple of years ago against Dallas in the playoffs. Ricky Spanish, Kraken should have taken Johnston. I mean, there are a lot of other teams, everybody ahead of Dallas, that is saying that now with the benefit of hindsight. But I'm telling you, if the Kraken at number 2 overall took Wyatt Johnston over Matty Beniers, people would be wondering what the heck they were doing. It would nobody was thinking him as a top 3 pick in the draft that year. The Stars just found that gem late in the first round. Russ, I'm on Team Tank for the most part, but they should win on Monday because I'm going to it. Understand the sentiment there, Russ. And hey, you know what? They only have 3 home games left all season. I wouldn't mind if they won all 3 of the games at home. You can lose the others, but you know, if you're going to lose on the road. If you're going to win at home. So that's kind of what I'd want to see. Let's see. Daniel, this is why Forsland is such a pro, saving his mascot story until the game was out of hand. Such a pro and a great story. I'm curious what that story is. I got to go back and look at it. Of course, being at the game here in person, we don't get the chance to hear the broadcast. So, yeah, I'm curious what that mascot story was for John Forsland. But yeah, he is an absolute pro, fantastic on the call every single time. And it is a treat having him around. And hey, he's got some great stories that we hear at practice and just being around as well. Like you only get like the broadcast is just the tip of the iceberg. He's got amazing stories for days. I could listen to those for a long time. So good comment there, Daniel. Let's see. Fusion Mix. The Stars have had no business winning any of their last 3 games, and I think had a meeting about it. Kraken, unfortunately, are on the receiving end of a get-right game. Interesting. Well, I love the proactiveness of Dallas, where they won their last 3 games, and if, they hadn't played all that well but managed to get away with wins, that's the kind of thing you want to get ahead of before it becomes a problem, especially late in the season. Something I wish maybe it'd be nice if the Kraken had a little bit more of that earlier this year when they were winning games against some teams that were near the bottom of the league. And, they probably didn't deserve to win given how they played, but I love the proactiveness from the Dallas, either the players or the coaching staff. I'm not sure kind of who drove that. Edward, didn't we have 2 straight against Dallas last year as well? Trying to remember when that would have been. Did they have 2 straight against Dallas? I'm going to look this up real quick because I think I can look it up really fast. Let's see. Dallas. No, didn't have 2 straight last season against Dallas. They were spaced out a little bit. They had 2 kind of close. Stratic Kraken have lots of tough opponents coming up. Lots of runway for the tank. They do have, let's see. Dallas again. Vancouver, I think is winnable. And then San Jose, certainly winnable. It's funny because it is a really tough schedule on paper. I know Tankathon says they have like one of the toughest remaining schedules there. But I see Vancouver, San Jose, and Utah as winnable games. And then, really, I feel like they're going to split the 2 LA games. They always tend to play the Kings really well. So I could see, maybe 4 wins in there, which might be enough to keep them out of that 3rd spot. But you never know, it's hard to predict. Christian, are there reasons to expect the power play will greatly improve next year? I think that's a really good question, Christian. And actually it's something I was talking with Dylan about a little bit toward the end of this game. And I was thinking about it. I was like, well, do I want to get this narrative started on the podcast quite yet? I felt like it was a thing to talk about for maybe once the season's over or an off-season conversation. But I was looking at the power play and how rough it's been tonight and really all season. And I was looking also at just how the Kraken have struggled defensively. And I said, look, if there's a move that maybe makes sense to make, might it be getting rid of the coach that is in charge of 2 things, the power play and the defense? Just some food for thought there, and maybe bringing in a power play specialist. So that would be a reason that the power play could improve. But also the other biggest reason that the power play could greatly improve next year is just different players on it. And we still have to see, what Ron Francis decides to do in the offseason as far as what players he can bring in. Because really, there's just a lack of talent, of finishing talent on this power play. You look at this versus a team like Dallas, it just has really good players all over the place. The Kraken just don't have it. So whether that's a Yanni Newman stepping in, providing a real one-timer threat, but realistically, it's going to need more than that. You're going to need to actually acquire a star player or 2 that can make a difference on the power play. And so, we'll see how much reason for optimism there is once we see what moves they make. Really, it's going to take, those are the 2 things you can do is change out the coach and I still think, look, you've had Paul McFarland, you've had Bob Woods and Jess Campbell, you've had 2 different coaching staffs. And I really just think it's a talent issue as far as how the team's constructed for the power play. I think there's only so much that even a good power play coach could get out of this group. But good news is you have the offseason to potentially add to it. Russ, the Stars just look like a team that you make any mistake and they'll punish you. Yeah, especially their top 6. They will pounce all over any kind of mistakes that you make. And you just give them a little time and space and they can kill you. You look at that first goal too, where it's Maverick Bork down behind the net, and the Kraken were positioned pretty well but he just gets that extra little step to draw the defender away, and all of a sudden Robertson, boom, right there to just slam the puck into the net from the slot, and it's just so hard to defend against, which is why I liked what the Kraken were doing early in this game in the defensive zone. I thought they were putting a lot of pressure on the Stars forwards, especially down low along the boards, playing them very physically, and it just seemed exhausting to Dallas, and the Kraken are able to get that lead out of it and keep it for a little bit. I just think playing that way defensively is exhausting. It's tiring. And at a certain point, you get worn down. And I think the Stars were just able to keep at it, and wear the Kraken down there. But I liked how they started in this one. If you keep a full 60 of that, I think you can do all right. Blue White Flame on the plus side, Stars Avs first round should be amazing. Oh yeah, I think I said second round earlier, but first round is what I meant. But yeah, they seem destined for each other in the first round. That is going to be a heck of a series. It's a shame that it's a first round series. I don't like the current playoff format with the divisional stuff where one of those teams is going to have to be out in the first round. I don't like that personally. Fusion Mix would rock if James Higgins falls to fourth the way Shane did. It's certainly possible given the top four in this draft. I could see them, aside from, look, I think you're going to have Schaefer going top two, and I think you're going to have Misa going top two. But the next two I could see kind of going whatever way, and maybe even someone jumping into that top four. So I could see that happening. And James Higgins, yeah, big game-winning goal there the other day, in the college tournament there. So that was pretty cool to see. Although I do think he is probably the guy out of the top four that is the worst fit for what the Kraken need, just because he's another center, one who's a little undersized and might take a little bit longer. Like, you already have a Berkeley Catton who's an undersized, really skilled center. You already have Matty Beniers, who's kind of an undersized, really skilled center. Where does he kind of fit in long term? I mean, look, if he's there at 4, you take him, but you then have to worry about, okay, where does he fit? Let's see. Hey, Matthew, what are you going to do when we get to the draft after your disappointment? We draft another center. It depends on who the center is. If it's Michael Misa, I'm thrilled. If it's Higgins, I can live with it. But we'll see. I doubt they'll draft a center unless it's just someone that falls and you can't miss on. Lindsay's telling me the story here. John punched a mascot who was blocking the ice from his view. I thought he was joking with that signature dry sarcasm, but it was true. I think I've heard that one before. I think that's right. I know he's got a thing with mascots. I remember that from year one when I was actually at a morning skate here in this building back when they had him at the arena. And I remember him talking about mascots. Yeah, no, I remember that story. That's a good one. Let's see. Jenna, is it true that Allison was the mascot at her college? I think I've heard something like that. I think I have heard about that. Or something like that. She's a mascot or something similar. Jason, this is the Kraken. They probably sweep the LA games and lose to San Jose. Oh, they could totally do it. It is, anything is possible. Let's see. Ricky Spanish, who's the coach that's in charge of the power play? So it is both Dave Lowry and Jess Campbell. They both work on the power play. And in practice, what you'll see usually is they'll kind of split up with the 2 power play units. Jess will coach one, Dan will coach the other. Jess will coach one, and then Bob Woods will coach the other one. It's and so you'll kind of see the 2 of them split duties there, and they will switch off with the 2 units. So it's not just like one unit that's always that's always Jess and that's always Bob. It just kind of changed there. And then yeah, it is Bob Woods and Jess who do the power play. Sorry if I said a different name earlier. I don't remember what exactly I said, but it is Jess Campbell and it is Bob Woods. Those are the 2. And when I floated the idea of maybe changing up the coach who is in charge of 2 things, the defense and the power play, that would be Bob Woods. So I think that's something that they maybe ought to look into in the offseason, and maybe bringing in more of a power play specialist, because I mean, Jess does have some experience working with the power play, but it's not really her specialty, and she doesn't have a whole lot of experience with it really. I mean, just this 1 year at the NHL level. So I think that could benefit. And Julia, yes, Jess was brought in as more of a skills and skating coach. Yes, that is her specialty. That's what she was doing before Dan grabbed her for the Firebirds coaching staff. So that is really her forte. That's what she's the best at. And she's still learning, for the power play coach. Look, any coach is 32 years old, still going to have things that they're working on, that they're learning. But, I said Dave Lowry and Jess at first. Sorry. It is Bob Woods and Jess Campbell. That's what it is. It's Bob and Jess. But yeah, so it's not really her specialty, and I just think the Kraken would really benefit from bringing in a coach someone who that is their specialty, and someone who has run successful power plays before, very successful power plays. And I just think that's something the Kraken have never really had. Dave Lowry has kind of a limited track record running power plays, and Jess has kind of a limited track record just as an assistant coach in general. Not too long that she's been there in the job. And you bring in a coach, if you can find an assistant who's actually run successful power plays for 5-6 years at the NHL level, I think that would really benefit the coaching staff. Let's see. Allison was a spider mascot. Ooh, okay, yeah. There's a photo of Allison as the spider mascot for Richmond. I know, yeah, that's right. I have seen that photo. That is pretty funny. That is good stuff. I googled Google Allison Lucan Richmond spider mascot, and there's news stories about it. That's great. All right, so I know we've got Dylan coming in a little bit. I don't see him quite yet. He's hearing from the players and from Coach Dan after this one. It's interesting too. There's a lot of fans still in the stands that are there meeting. I see a Stars player down there talking to some people, and a Kraken player came out there as well. I wonder which Star would have people around here that would come visit. If anyone knows of any Dallas Stars with Seattle area ties, let me know and we can guess who that is. Andrew here, I feel like we aren't one piece away from playoff, but maybe 3 to 4 pieces. How long is that realistically going to take? That's a good question, and one that we're going to cover quite a bit on the podcast as we get to the offseason and everything. But if I can, give you a little preview here. I agree. I think the Kraken are certainly more than one piece away from being a playoff team. I mean, you look at they're the 4th team to be eliminated this year. They are going to finish like 20 points back of a playoff spot. That is a giant gap to fill. And I would argue they're lucky to have finished as high in the standings as they will. They've gotten lucky in a lot of key areas. They've gotten some fantastic goaltending. Their penalties against have been really low. Their shooting percentage has actually been decent. Like, they are 3 to 4 pieces at least away from being a playoff team. And realistically, that's going to take at least probably 2 seasons. I don't see how they can turn it around. I mean, again, the playoffs, it is a low bar. Half the league makes the playoffs. Like, it is, anything can happen. We saw it in year 2 where that team that more we think about it, the more it looks like a fluke, but that team managed to make the playoffs. So it's certainly possible next year, but I don't know how after this offseason you're going to go into the season where the experts and the models and the predictions and everything would say that you are likely to be a playoff team. It's going to be really, really tough. So Ron Francis has his work cut out for him. There a lot needs to be done to get them, over that gap where it's just, they're 20 points back. It's a big gap to make up. And you can see the difference of, between the Kraken and like the team like Dallas here, where they are, a proper contender for the Stanley Cup. And that's, the kind of gap that you have to make up to get really to be one of those kind of clear top 6 in the West that is going to make the playoffs year in, year out. Stratic, I wonder what Dan's pregame vision was for this one. I would love to know. We will never find out. I don't think he would ever say what it was, but yeah, I do wonder on that one. Ricky Spanish just noticed the Stars have the best PK in the league. It makes sense. And I really like their PK. I mean, they have some really talented players on it, but they were very aggressive too. And I think it kind of threw the Kraken off, especially early on in this game, where how aggressive the Stars forwards were being, killing penalties. And you can see the Stars got a couple partial breakaways early on the PK, got some better chances than the Kraken had on the power play. And it just really stifled everything Seattle was trying to do. And especially getting into the zone too. I mean, they were clogging up the blue line really well. I love the Stars PK. They are very, very good. Let's see. Oh, Zoe, they said on the broadcast that Ben is from Victoria. That is not Jamie Benn. That is definitely not Jamie Benn. But it is close enough, yeah. But I'm looking at the guy. That is a good guess as any. But yeah, that is definitely not Jamie Benn there. I would recognize Jamie Benn. Let's see. Julia, too bad lottery order isn't determined by order of elimination. That'd be interesting. Order of mathematical elimination. Just do that. That'd be interesting. I still, it wouldn't accomplish. Well, I guess if you had the lottery order, just the lottery would do the same thing. Yeah, I guess that probably wouldn't be all that different, but that'd be interesting. It would reward you, I guess, for being in a tough conference. David, a consistent problem with our beloved team are breakaways. You watch any other team and they have players who can add a little spice to their approach, our guys just skate up and shoot it. I mean, we've seen that with some of the Kraken shootout woes that they've had as well, but really it's just a matter of having really skilled players to earn those, those chances, and then also be able to put them home. I mean, we see it with Wyatt Johnston there, just zooming past Adam Larson, kind of having that deke to go around Joey Decord. Like, that's what a star player gets you. I mean, we saw it. The one that sticks out in my mind was, like, Kyle Connor of the Jets in this building a little while ago too, where he just turns on the wheels and beats Joey Decord up high. It's just about having really skilled forwards, and the Kraken, they have among, I think, the least skilled forward groups in the entire NHL. So that's just one of the things that gets you. Let's see. Fusion Mix. Alan Nasruddin is an insanely good penalty kill coach. Yeah, no, he is. And I mean, the Stars PK is just so good. Becca, with Ebbs getting that super unlikely injury this year, it would be great for him to have another run with this team. Yeah, I would like seeing that. And he's been playing so well. I mean, really, before the injury and since, he's played fantastic. So him and Jaden Schwartz, like watching the two of them together, just the hustle, the effort, and the skill there. I love that play where it was Jaden Schwartz that was falling down and just kind of whacked the puck up ahead to Jordan Eberle early in this game. I really want to see Ebbs finish on that one. But we haven't seen enough of the two of them playing together this season. They've been awesome. Stratic, I think the Kraken are only one piece away from the playoffs if that piece is prime Leon Draisaitl. Yeah, I think you get a top 10 player in the league, you add them to this team, I think they're a playoff team. Teams, you don't acquire a top 10 player in the league. Really? Those types of players change hands, once or twice a decade. Not happening here, but yeah, actually, I think prime Draisaitl would get him there. Let's see. Zoe, how are you feeling about the change in D pairs? That's a good question there, Zoe. And I see Dylan setting up. I want to get his opinion on this one as well. As far as the change in D pairs, like, I still don't love. I want Evans Montour to work. I still don't love it, but it really, it's just because I think Riker Evans is still not playing all that well. That's kind of how I feel about it. I'm going to check how they did just numbers wise in this game. They definitely were the first pair, had the most ice time in this one, and actually had pretty good 65% expected goal share. That's pretty good. I mean, I noticed Brandon Montour in a positive way a lot, but I still feel like Evans has a little ways to go. And I think once he gets his game back, that D pair could work, but until then, I worry about it. And then Alexiak Mahura is fine. I loved how physical Jamie Alexiak was being tonight, though. I really did like that, actually. There are a few moments where he got really physical and matched the physicality of the Stars players, especially some of their better ones too. And I think that's great. I want to see more of that from him. Let's see. Julia Dry got 50 and 51 tonight, won them the game. It's like he's dragging them there against their will. Yeah, they certainly need to be dragged there without McDavid. I mean, really, it's him and Draisaitl. Zoe, do you think Mahura could be brought back next season? And Julia would love to keep Mahura. I would too. I think there's got to be a chance, right? The fact that they didn't move him at the deadline, I think, could also potentially be telling, because he's a UFA who could have gone for an asset there. But I do think they should bring him back. If he'll sign for anywhere near league minimum, which if you give him a one-way deal, I feel like, why would you want to mess with what's working? And you could stay here and you could earn an NHL salary. I would really consider staying here if I was Mahura. And I think the Kraken should look into that. They're going to need another cheap 6D next year. And I do think there's actually an interesting kind of lineup battle that's maybe getting settled right now, where between Mahura and Cale Fleury, they're kind of rotating the two of them out right now. I think it might be an audition for next year. Both those guys are going to be free agents. I think they're both kind of auditioning for potentially that same role. And so I'm curious what you all think in chat, whether you prefer Mahura or a Cale Fleury in that spot. And if we have Dylan here, all right, Dylan is just about ready to join us, waiting for him to give me the thumbs up, and the thumbs up has been given. So, hey there, Dylan.
Hey.
How was? Well, I could tell from your voice, the mood in the locker room probably wasn't the best. But tell me how it was.
Yeah, I think, disappointed. I think there was a general feeling that they were able to stay in this one for a good amount of time. Chandler Stevenson referred to that when we spoke with him, and that, this wasn't necessarily an instance of just, kind of kind of getting beat by a better team, you were able to hang in there. You were able to stay in this one close. Dan Bylsma kind of talked about it and opened up his comments with this. Just it didn't feel like a 5-1 game, right? In the sense that like this final score is pretty lopsided. That's really just not the story of this one. That being said, from whether it was Chandler Stevenson, Ellie Tolvanen, Coach Dan Bylsma, special teams, right? Taking too many penalties, putting the Dallas Stars on the power play. They have that lethal power play. They have all those good players. Giving them that advantage is just something that you can't afford to do. And then you had plenty of looks yourself on the power play in this one, and you just weren't really able to use those to kind of stay in this game, close the gap a little bit there offensively, and that was a big missed opportunity for them.
Yeah, I mean, we talked plenty about special teams in here. That was kind of one of the main things that we said is one of the culprits for this one. I mean, was there any kind of details as far as, particularly on the power play, why that wasn't clicking for them? I know the Stars do have the top PK unit in the NHL, and so they played very well, but, anything there?
Yeah, Dan was asked about, was there maybe like issues trying to get to the inside a little bit? Chandler Stevenson had talked about a lot of the opportunities for the Kraken in this one, whether it was 5-on-5 or on the power play, coming from the outside. And, Dan said, yeah, you got to give credit to Dallas and their ability to defend inside, but he felt like they had some opportunities there. They just weren't really able to connect on any plays. They weren't really able to have the timing right as far as making those passes to the interior when guys were in those spots and maybe uncovered, or other things where there was a couple opportunities for tips that just didn't connect. And that just makes a big difference when you're just, for one reason or another, not able to make those plays work on any given night versus the nights that you are.
Yeah, and then I see you've got your notes out there still. Any other quotes or notes or anything you wanted to go over that people said?
So Dan was asked about the team being mathematically eliminated. Ellie Tolvanen was as well, but Tolvanen said he did not know that. So that's
probably for the best of the players don't know.
Yeah, that seems to be kind of
you want them playing as if they're not.
Exactly, and that
the coach ought to know.
That seems to be the case around the league when it comes to this time of year. But yeah, Dan was kind of asked, like, does this make it so that you can kind of shift focus a little bit, right? Like the team can start looking towards other things, looking towards the future, playing for things in the future. Basically all the stuff that we've been talking about, wanting to see from the group and what it's sort of seemed like the group has been doing. But Dan said no. I said since the trade deadline, they've just been focused on playing for each other, playing for the fans, and just going out there and playing good hockey for just kind of all parties involved. And that doesn't really change whether or not you've been mathematically eliminated or you were just kind of in the spots that they were in. And so kind of push back on a little bit on that front. But for the most part, I mean, I still feel like that fits in line with what we've been thinking and what this group has been doing, right? Like they're going out there, they're trying, they're playing good hockey. And I think that I'm sure there's stuff that they're working on and that they're trying out there, and they're just not going to tell us that.
I was going to say, I think the answer should be no. I don't think it should take being mathematically eliminated to move the page or to work on other things. If that's what it takes, it's way too late. Like, what are you doing? This team was realistically out of it by January, and I understand not wanting to give up that early, but there's no way it should take you till this point where it's mathematically impossible to change your mindset or do any of those things. And I do think they've been more proactive about it than that. But yeah, I think the answer absolutely should be no, and it seems like it was. And then Zoe with the super chat here, Dunn called the power play horrendous with Piper. I mean, is that... I know Vince Dunn is not going to sugarcoat it. He's going to tell you exactly how it is. But I figure that's, generally, even if it was reading between the lines, the feeling you got from people.
Yeah, definitely. And look, it's one of those things where like he's not wrong, right? Like it was really rough watching it out here tonight. And it's one of those weird things where it feels like every time we start seeing some momentum, we start seeing certain looks from this power play, and we start thinking like, okay, they're maybe working on this stuff. They're working on getting to the net front more, making those passes to the backdoor plays that we've seen these last couple games, and they've been able to convert on a decent amount of them. Whether it's adding Yanni Newman to the power play and his one-timer and incorporating that. it feels like we see that for like 2 to 3 game stretches, and then it just kind of disappears. And you didn't see either of those things tonight. Like, Yanni Newman's still out there on the power play. I know teams are aware of him and they have to respect him as a one-timer threat, but you're not even trying to get him the puck right now. You did,
Yeah,
at
and that
least not
should,
tonight.
yeah, and if they're taking it away, that should open up something else somewhere else. And it
Right.
doesn't seem to be doing that, or they seem to not be able to find that. And it feels like a multi-year theme. I don't know. It felt like last year too, with a totally different coaching staff. Like when they would develop good power play habits or a good concept or something that works, it would last for about 2 or 3 games, and then it would just kind of melt away. And it seems like we're seeing that again. But I still think a lot of the problem with that is just not having an elite level player, a star level player to build a power play around that teams have to constantly respect. Remember, Dylan, we were going through like watching whether it was like Jack Eichel or any of the, what were we doing? We were researching something, right? For power plays.
We were researching Bob Woods being in charge of the power
Yes,
play, right?
that's
Going
right.
back
And
to
looking,
Buffalo under Coach Dan Bylsma.
yeah, and looking where the success was. And so much of it was just having an elite level player that you can feed the puck to, that makes stuff happen. And the Kraken don't have that, and they've never had that. And I think a lot of it comes down to that when you don't have that, it's so hard to get that consistent success.
Right. And whether we're looking at, I'm agreeing with you, but that it can look, it
There's
can
room
look
for
different.
improvement. It can look
Right.
better.
Yeah. No, there is. It's whether it's looking at other teams currently or going back 10 years to look at that Buffalo team and Jack Eichel with those one-timers. So much of it comes down to player freedom and player movement. And it really felt like that was a point of emphasis at the very beginning through training camp with this group. Remember how excited we were at those first couple practices and training camp, instances that we were able to see. We were seeing that player movement on the power play. I remember us exclaiming it while we were sitting up there in the stands. I remember Allison Lucan exclaiming it when she was up there in the stands. We were just all so pumped to see that kind of finally for the Kraken. It's all gone now. Like it's that's not here. We're not seeing it in practice. We're not seeing it in practice out there on the ice. We're not seeing it in practice at KCI when they're actually practicing. It's just not something that's there. And I think that so much of why having a star player works for teams on the power play, why Jack Eichel's one-timer worked for that Buffalo power play 10 years ago, was guys being in different spots, right? You can use that one-timer, but again, it's easy to maybe game plan against it if you're another team. So what do you have to do if they're going to start game planning to take away, say, a certain area of the ice? You got to move around a little bit. And I think back to those tapes that we were watching of Jack Eichel on the power play. And yes, they were all one-timers, but they weren't even all somehow from the same side of the ice. He was somehow getting one-timers on the opposite side sometimes. The point was no two of them really looked the same, right? There were times where he was in down close by the net. There was other times that he was further out, times where he was near the boards, times where he was more in the slot. There was a lot of movement, and he was taking the spaces that the defense was giving him, and then the team would find him, and he was able to use that one-time shot and score a goal. I don't see why there's any reason that Yanni Newman couldn't do that, other than there just doesn't seem to be a lot of emphasis placed on player movement on the power play, finding those gaps that opposing PKs are going to give you, working on getting there when the timing for a play can work out, because obviously you can't set up there too early. But just that kind of working on things like that I think is really what they're missing. And that's what star players do. Whether it's 5-on-5 or on the power play, all star players do is they move around and they just make stuff happen, right? Like you can fake that on the power play. You can't really fake it 5-on-5. That's just something you need to be skilled and creative to do. But you can fake it a little on the power play, and this team is not doing that right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why I floated the idea a little earlier. I talked to you about it a little before the game of, maybe reevaluating one of the assistant coaches there who might be in charge of the power play. So I want to ask you a question that we were talking about right before you joined. Zoe asked, what do you think of the D pairs, after a few games with Evans and Montour and then Alexiak and Mahura, and kind of the Mahura Fleury rotation as well. So what do you think of Evans Montour, and then also this rotation that we've been seeing with Fleury and Mahura, and maybe the two of them possibly competing for a job next year?
Yeah, I I want to like say that I need more time with the Montour Evans pairing. It's really tough for me because there's times when I really like it, where I feel that Riker has kind of figured things out in the sense of he can just be the guy playing back a little bit, really allow Brandon Montour to go out there and just, play free, go out there and charge up the ice, go heavy into the offensive zone, cheat up a little bit in the defensive zone, all of those things. I want to say that I like the pairing for those reasons. I don't love it in the sense that having that more defensive focus for Riker right now when he's struggling defensively hasn't seemed to work out all that great, and I think that that's maybe a struggle, and maybe that's why he's having these struggles defensively, is that he's overthinking things because for the first time he's really put in a spot where he's got to make sure he's the guy back, and that's just got him up in his head a little bit too much. I don't know, but it's one of those where I see the vision. I see why it can work in theory. And I think we're even getting a decent amount of it working at times out there on the ice. But it's one of those things where it would be working a whole lot better if Riker was playing as well as he has in the past.
Yeah, that's more or less kind of what I said and my thoughts on it. I really want it to work, but it's just that Riker isn't really playing his game fully right now, and that's holding it back. And then on the Mahura Fleury thing,
Mahura Fleury, it feels very situational, and I don't even think that it's situation based for them. It's situation based for the rest of the team. I think if you can play the skating style, get up the ice, work on the controlled breakouts and zone entries and all of that stuff, that 200-foot game that Dan Bilesma wants to play, Cale Fleury can just so run that from the back end. It then works because you still have that puck mover back there on the third pairing with Riker Evans up with Brandon Montour. You have that kind of consistency down your D pairs where you always have somebody who can make those stretch passes, who can skate up the ice with the puck, who can handle things off of a rush in the neutral zone. And I think that that's very important for this group. But if the group is not going to be capable of really playing that skating style 200-foot attack, I think you need Josh Mahura back there because he's just a little bit smarter and more physical in the defensive zone. And I think that when you aren't playing aggressive and getting that puck up the ice quickly, Mahura just seems to be a little bit more of a steady presence back there than Fleury.
Yeah, and that seems to be the consensus in here, and I would agree. Yeah, Mahura over Fleury, and I do like what both of them have done, kind of in spot duty this year. But I would go Mahura over Fleury, and I would like to keep him if the Kraken could sign him for something near league minimum. And don't pay too much, but if you could kind of bring him back as a cheap 6D, I certainly wouldn't mind that. And from third pairing defenseman to fourth line forwards, Andrew asking, love Asimont, but you guys sold me that he isn't worth keeping a spot for. And on paper, I mean, look, you still want that spot open for a young guy, but Asimon's kind of won me over. If you can bring him back near league minimum, do it.
Yeah, I've been talking about that the last couple post games, right? And I've said, look, the thing that makes it tough is that he takes a spot from a Ryan Winterton or a Ty Cartier or somebody like that. But I've said it, if you want to be competitive next year, he's probably your best option in that spot. He's probably the guy that makes you the most competitive just because of his speed, his shooting mentality, all of those things that he brings. So yeah, assuming he's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to keep around, go with him, right? Like at some point, the team's got to take a step forward. If you're going to be challenging for a playoff spot, I think Mikey Asimont gives you a better chance of doing that than, say, fourth line Ryan Winterton, who's going to be a little bit more defensive focused, not going to have that same speed element to his game that Mikey Asimont brings. Like, I just think that it's just a difference in playing style. But I think what this team needs is a little bit more of what Mikey has rather than what, say, a Winterton or even Ty Cartier can.
Agreed. And Becca says, we love Mikey and Jason. Sadly, I think it's time to let someone take a spot from Carts. I agree. I mean, personally, I wouldn't qualify him. If I was the Kraken, it's a tough call to have to make, but I've kind of seen enough. I'd rather have an Asimont or a Winterton in that spot personally. And so, we'll see what decisions they make there. And I see Emma up here. I love Joey, but it's hard to watch him in the net so much. I'm worried like we're taking advantage of his talent and he'll be too burned out when it matters. I share your concern, Emma. I think, Dylan, you also share that concern as well. I would love to see Philip Grubauer in net for this next game. I really worry. I know I keep saying it and he keeps being okay or healthy, but I worry they're burning out Joey Decord.
I worry about it too. It's one of those things where, I talked about it last game, right? We talked about this last post game, and it was, hey, it seemed like in that game they were maybe trying some different things. You want to see what that stuff looks like with your goalie who's going to be in net next season. That all went away this time, right? We weren't seeing those east-west passes. We weren't seeing a game played up higher in the offensive zone. We weren't seeing any of those different looks and different systems that the team was utilizing in that last game against Edmonton. If you're just going back to this, just put Grubauer in.
Yeah.
I know you want to play hard, whatever, but again, you're now officially mathematically eliminated. Like, there is no reason for you to ride one guy so heavily.
Yeah, and there's no even theoretical excuse that wins could ever help you anymore. Losses are 100% incentivized at this point. As much as it sucks to think about it that way. But looking forward to the next game, though, whether Grubauer's in net, whether Joey's in net, Fusion Mix says, I'm really curious to see how the Kraken adapt on Monday. I really think if they play hard with last change, they could exploit how badly the Stars defense moves the puck when Harley isn't on the ice. And Dylan, I know you have your thoughts on the Stars defense group here. I know you really enjoyed watching them tonight. Harley's magnificence and then everybody else's, well, whatever else they were doing.
It's just, I've been trying to think of the words for it all night too, but it is so much fun for me to watch this blue line, because it is just so many guys. It's so obvious what it is Jim Neal, right? General manager for the Dallas Stars. It very much feels like just loaded up his hand with like 6, because they're running 70 right now. There is 6 darts and threw them all at a dartboard that just had different styles of defender on it. And each one managed to land in a different section of that dartboard. And so he just grabbed a Matt Dumba, Leon Bichelle, whoever it is, right? A Cody Ceci. And you're just running, and no 2 defensemen on this blue line looks the same. They don't even look like they're trying to accomplish the same thing when they're out there on the ice. You've got guys that are trying to work defensively, trying to be physical. You've got other guys trying to be offensive and move the puck up and play a 200-foot game. Other guys that want to be offensive, but just in the offensive zone. Like, they're just so scattered and all over the place. And having it be so that they don't even have like traditional pairings and like switches, they just kind of switch one here and there on the fly, just makes it that much more entertaining to just kind of watch them try to figure it out. And they're always kind of having to glance over to see who they're with and figure out which unique play style that player has and how they then have to work things. It's just such a mess, and I love it. It's so much fun to see.
It is fun. And for those of you who listen to the Red Glare podcast, the debate that we've had, I turned to you today and I said, look, see what you think about the Dallas Stars blue line. That is how I feel about the Montreal Canadiens. They are fun. They're not good, but they're fun. And I think we maybe found a bit of understanding there. As Fusion Mix says, the Stars defense is the reason it'll be Avs in 5. They have 3 Yanni Hakanpahs. And I did think I spotted Hakanpah.
You did.
You know this during the game when there was a shot block in front. I was like, wait, is that Hakanpah? Who is that? And you're like, Hakanpah's not there anymore.
Yeah, no. It was Smith.
Oh, yeah, it was Brendan Smith.
Just Brendan Smith. I forgot to mention him. Just another random one on that blue line. Just crazy blue line. And also apologies to Jim Neal. We were crammed into the elevator, and I do think that my backpack was kind of squishing into him against the wall there a little bit. So sorry.
Man, adding insult to injury there with that answer there. It's all about the blue line he's assembled.
I'm sure behind closed doors he would agree with that assessment. We saw what that offseason looked like for them. It very much looked like it. But just kind of speaking to playing this team again so quickly here on this next on this next game upcoming on Monday. Dan was kind of asked about like what are you going to try to change for that game? What's the focus as you're going to be playing them again? And he said, look, thought through large stretches of this game that the team played really strong hockey. They played very, very good. And it's just, yeah, no, it's all the power play stuff again. It's like reading the top half of the transcript all over again when he was asked about special teams. I thought there was more to it, but I guess not. But it was just that, look, it's the same thing like Chandler Stevenson said, same thing that he said, right, earlier, and that I said earlier. You played a strong game. You were in this game for a long period of time. Special teams was the difference maker. Don't give them power plays.
Yeah. Simple as that. I think that would go a long way toward making it at least close, like a one bounce type of game. And I kind of let off with that too, that it felt like what I told you about earlier, right? Where it's maybe not losing fun, because I don't think we call this game fun, but losing respectable until the end when it got out of hand. So I think that's kind of the key. And I've been meaning to get to this one though, as it jumps on me here. Christian asking, CPA looks like a green screen behind Dylan. Is he really there? Dylan, are you really there? Can you prove it?
Can I prove it? I mean, I can try to like here's a.
That could be an elaborate green screen there. I don't know. Yeah,
I don't
be in
know
front of
what
the
I
green
can
screen.
do. I don't know what
Here,
I can
I
do.
will. I
can
help
go climb the
toward proving
netting.
it here. Here, Dylan.
There we go.
There you go. That's my vantage point of Dylan with the super zoom on my phone.
Yep.
So that's what it looks like there from my angle.
Yeah, well,
Dylan.
see,
So yes, he is actually here.
I was tired of being the mysterious man in the shadows constantly when doing this stuff. So I got a little ring light, and then it's doing such a good job of lighting me. It just looks completely fake back here now. So there you go. I tried to get better, and now, everybody's just going to get on me for something else.
Yep. So make sure to stay on Dylan for any kind of self-improvement that he tries. Make sure he can't get away with that, everybody.
Yes. No wins ever. That's me. I can't have them. I get too full of myself if I get them. So you all got to keep me humble.
Exactly. Keep that ego in check, everybody. It needs to be done. And then Bryce saying, I also don't think AC Mont blocks Winterton or Cartier from a spot in the same way a Tanev or Cord would. You could easily waive or scratch Mikey if a younger guy beats him out at any point. Exactly. You always have that option as well. As long as he's under, 1.2 million, you could bury that contract in the minors essentially. So yeah, he doesn't necessarily take a spot away. It's just competition, and you let the competition run.
Right. And it's still right. Like the thing that's really kind of blocking people is players more so like an Andre Burakovsky, who are going to occupy those middle six roles. I think Oliver Bjorkstrand would have been in that category had they not traded him at this last deadline. That's one of those things where like those were the spots. Oliver Bjorkstrand's spot, it was Yanni Newman, right? Like that was the difference there. Like you had to move guys out of that middle six so that you can make room for guys like Yanni Newman, so that next year you can make room for Berkeley Catton if he's going to hang around for the full season, or somebody else like that. Those were the ones that were really tough and really brutal that you had to kind of clear out. And, maybe one day you're going to have to figure out down the middle of the ice as well, potentially even with Berkeley Catton next year. But those middle six spots, I feel like, were the ones that were definitely kind of mucking up the works a lot more than, say, anything on the fourth line. Now that the Kraken as an organization are more in a place where they can run a traditional fourth line of kind of grinders who are going to play like 9, 10, maybe 11 minutes a night, it's just not as much of an issue. Like you can just kind of cycle guys in and out of there, and it's fine.
Yeah. And the one thing though we didn't talk about yet, I don't think we mentioned in the chat, is the fight from Mikey Asimont there, dropping the gloves with Leon Bichelle, who is has
7 pounds 40
pounds.
Yeah,
7 inches 40 pounds on him. And I love this. This just happened on Twitter. We just got a comment from a Lightning fan saying, Mikey does not give a F, I promise, with the laughing emoji. They know him well, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, I don't think so. I mean, there's practice tomorrow if we're able to make it, and we could ask him, and I'm sure that would be the answer.
Yeah, that'd be good. I feel like we haven't talked to him outside of a scrum yet, so that'd be a fun little like one-on-one introduction there. And then Julia, good to see 100% on board with trying to keep Dylan's ego in check.
Shocking.
Job number one for you there. And then Zoe, curious about Dylan's review of Yanni Newman's game after the comments in Discord.
Yeah, so I had noticed early in this one, in the first period, he had 2 rough plays. They weren't strictly turnovers, but they were I don't even want to necessarily call them mistakes either. He had some interesting choices that led to some odd man rush opportunities for Dallas going the other way. One was he went to make a pass back to the blue line, but he didn't pick his head up and didn't realize that there was no blue liner there, that the blue liner had cycled, and he kind of ended up just threading the needle through several Kraken, and it just went right up the ice. And Dallas, because of the way that they play, we've talked about this in the past, they just wait for those opportunities. I think it was Wyatt Johnston who was able to pick that one up and just head up the ice with a full head of steam. And so, that's a tough one there, where it was just I understand what he was doing, but it's, got to have your head up. You've got to, you can't afford to do that when your team's in the offensive zone, to send the team going out there with that. And then there was another one where they were kind of doing like a cycle, and I think he thought that he had somebody behind him and he didn't. So he left the puck and just kind of skated by it, and there was nobody else there. So Dallas was able just to grab it and head up the ice quickly. And so you had that same kind of situation play out. They're just two, kind of lack of overall awareness moments. They're pretty common mistakes for a young player to make, but he made them both within like the first 10 minutes of this one. And I was curious to see if we were going to see maybe some tough love from Dan, where he was going to maybe, sit him on the bench a little bit, maybe just for the rest of the first period, just give him a little bit of a reset, get him back in the game a little bit there. And then obviously later on in the second period, we saw the delay of game penalty from him. So it was a rough overall game for Yanni Newman. Not going to lie. It very much felt like one of those games that somebody who has played less than 10 NHL games might have. But it was a tough one. That being said, we didn't see that from Dan. We didn't see him try to reset Yanni Newman, at least not early on. I don't know what he finished ice time wise, but he was kind of right in there with Capo Caco into the second period. So,
yeah, he finished the 15 minutes even, and it was roughly even across the periods too. So Dan didn't really hold that back. And yeah, I think just tough rookie game. It had to happen for him eventually, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is normal stuff. Like everybody goes through these things. And, just to kind of clarify, because I know this was also something on Discord, somebody had brought up the idea of, well, we've been talking about let the young guys play, let them make those mistakes. Well, these games have, no stakes, right? You're eliminated from the playoffs. Like, this is the time to make those mistakes. And it definitely is. And the reason that you would maybe take a more tough love approach, or maybe sit a guy for the rest of the period or something like that, just maybe for a shift even, is just because you do want to still have a certain level of accountability where the player understands that there will be consequences, so that they don't form bad habits, right? Like, you don't want to just completely let the young guys go because it's like, hey, there's only 9 games left. We're mathematically eliminated. Let's just let them figure it out. You still want them to understand that hockey's not always going to be that way. It's not always going to be that way at the NHL level. And you do still have to be responsible when you're out there. You have to take care of the puck. You can't be giving other teams those odd man rushes, because you just don't want that to become habit for them. And I think the Anaheim Ducks are a really good example of this. That's something that they're now struggling with as they're trying to take a step forward. Why it's been so hard for them is because those young players kind of have been let go for a long period of time. And a lot of the, yes, they can be creative and go out there and try things, but they can also be irresponsible sometimes. And nobody really held them in check when it was their first couple years in the league. And now it's just become habit for a player like a Trevor Zegras to try these, incredible feats of skill that only he can pull off. But at the same time, when they don't work, can lead to very good chances going back up the ice, and that just keeps your team from winning hockey games. And so it's just one of those things where I feel like, I understand the idea of letting guys play through it and everything, but you want to make sure that, they understand that there are consequences, and there's just certain things that they can't let form and become a regular part of their day-to-day game.
Yeah, well said. I think it's a good explanation. Fusion Mix, whatever we think of Hackstall, at least he wasn't Dallas Eakins. That is very true. And Christian, let Shane do a Spinorama Michigan. I know he said that Dan would kill him if he ever tried that in a game, but
so we know Dan does have a line.
Yeah, there is a line, and I think that's probably a fair line. As much as, given that Shane had never tried it before that day, I think that's a fair line as well.
Yes.
He could do one the day Larson's putting
Yeah,
I would like to
exactly.
see the Larson thing first. I think that's a little bit more reasonable, but we'll continue to lobby as we do. So as we approach the hour mark here, and for a late game too, is we're at 11:20 now for that 7:30 start, which I know we're not a fan of here. But want to do a last call in chat here. Anything else, Dylan, to add here? Before we sign off.
No, I mean, I feel like the players and the coach kind of, had the story of this game, which was just special teams. It's been a long time since we've seen a game like this. You and I were talking about that up on the press bridge, right? Like, it just felt like the penalties just kept coming. Like, there was just no end to them. And I just don't think that this Kraken team is really built for games like that. And I think that they're certainly not built for games like that against a team like the Dallas Stars.
There's a reason that the Kraken try and play in games that don't have a whole lot of penalties, that they pride themselves on their discipline. You match power plays with a team like Dallas, you're probably not going to win that battle. And I think they know that. So that, I think that makes a lot of sense. And so let's see. We got one more in here, Fusion Mix. The Stars aren't able to re-sign Michael Granlund. I'd love the Kraken to nab him. I certainly don't think he's a good fit for this Dallas team. But also just, because he's not playing setter for this Dallas team. So maybe a guy who could move off as a winger. I just think they have enough middle six wingers. They've got enough middle six forwards. They need someone a little better, need to aim higher on that. Given the term and money he'll want, he's just more of what they already have.
Exactly. Like I just said, you were able to clear out like a Bjorkstrand. You probably still have Berkey in there taking up one of those spots. The last thing you need is another one of those guys.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it would just kind of add to the issue there. And this is a much bigger question from Seattle Nomad, though. RG, you mentioned at the start of postgame, we're 3 to 4 players away from being playoff competitive. Who needs to go to make space? We have been very reluctant to move from the OG Kraken. I would not hold back personally. I'll just name real quickly. But Burakovsky, if you can get rid of him, I would say Jaden Schwartz you should look at. I'm sorry, sell high potentially. You can't. Stevenson isn't really movable. But just about everybody in the middle six that's not really young, I think you have to look at. And I think you also really need to look at reworking the blue line. I think Jamie Alexiak should be on the trade market. I think you should look to move Adam Larson if you can. Really try and free up some space, but do it in a way that's trading for players that can help you, particularly like D for forwards, that type of thing. But yeah, I think really any of those guys that are over 27, 28 that have any kind of term, you should look to move them if you can.
Yeah, I think up front it becomes a little complicated because they don't have enough guys ready to take over those spots to maybe grow and develop into better players than what you currently have. So you'd probably more or less be replacing most of those guys up front. If you were to move out like 3 forwards, you're gonna at some point just start replacing them with guys that are roughly.
And I don't mean all of the ones that I said.
Right. Yeah. So there's that level. But yes, this is a team where this year you have to a large extent kind of solved your scoring problem. Like this team, assuming they don't finish out the year with the offense that they had out there tonight with only 1 goal, it's going to finish in the top half of the league in goals for. They were 13th in the league just a couple days ago, and every single team ahead of them was in a playoff spot. So this team has found a way to score goals this season, and that hasn't really been the issue like it was last year. You're getting the great goaltending from Joey Daccord, who has proven that he can do it over a full season with a full workload. So really the defense has been what the big letdown has been this year. And that's not just on the blue line. It's the forwards have been a part of that, the defensive zone. But it does go to show that, yes, if there's something that really does need to be remade right now, it is probably on the back end.
Yeah, and I think part of the over-reliance on the defense might be the lack of the forward group quality, but that's a more complicated conversation.
There's other stuff like, we've talked several times. Alexiak, and he's down to the 3rd pairing. He just doesn't fit with what this team's trying to do. Bringing in somebody who just fits the system is an upgrade.
Yeah, exactly. And you could use Alexiak. He's still a valuable asset. You could use him to go and get a forward maybe who fits the system as well.
Yeah, not a bad player, just bad for what this team is trying to do.
Exactly. And asking, is Maddie up for consideration part of an upgrade trade? I'd say only as part of an upgrade trade.
Yeah,
If
star
one
level
came out
trade.
there
Yeah.
that you couldn't pass up on. And I like this from Fusion Mix. Yeah, I guess you're right. Granlund just plays like a weird little demon that feels very Kraken core. Man, no wonder Ron Francis fell in this hole. I'm very fond of middle six guys. They are fun. Like, they are fun to root for and all that stuff. You need, and you do need them in order to win, but you need to have the star players to go with them. They need to be supporting players. They can't be the ones driving the bus. So I understand the sentiment there, Fusion Mix. I get it. But with that, I think we're going to sign off. I do want to thank Queen Anne Beer Hall one more time. Remind everybody that we do have the watch party at Moss Bay Hall, April 2nd. That is next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. for the Kraken Canucks game. It's going to be a really fun one, I think. Chance to, potentially eliminate the Vancouver Canucks or all but eliminate them in that one. I think it's going to be a really fun time. And for those of you on the east side, nice and easy to get to at Moss Bay Hall in Kirkland. So everyone, make sure to get out to that. And I can't wait to see you, talk with, and meet a lot more of you out there at the watch party. So want to big thanks to Queen Anne Beer Hall for sponsoring each and every one of these post-game lives. Thank you to everyone in chat. Thank you to those who gave super chats. And we will see you all after the game against the Stars again in 2 days.